Okay, so good morning, everyone. So it's my pleasure to continue this mini lecture. And just as a reminder of where we were yesterday, 2 days ago actually, so we stated the low degree conjecture. So namely, if we have some observation y and some quantity of interest z star, and if p smaller than d is the set of degree d polynomials in y, then we define the low degree optimal loss by the infimum of the quadratic risk over all possible polynomials of degree smaller than d. And the low degree conjecture, which was stated by Hopkins in 2018, states that for a wide class of models, if low degree polynomial fail, so are not significantly better than constant polynomials, just constant basically, then any polynomial time algorithm fail. And so as mentioned, this is a conjecture. Of course, it is not proven that this is true, but this is the basis for people who work in this field for trying to prove low degree lower bounds. Okay, so now I'm just going to make a few comments on why low degree polynomials are actually interesting. So the first reason is that they capture a lot of interesting algorithms. So spectral algorithms, approximately by power iteration, approximate message passing, also approximately. Of course, occurrence of motifs in a graph, that's clear. Gradient descent also, approximately. And also you can, so yesterday there was a question about thresholding. So you cannot really threshold statistics with low degree polynomial, but you can threshold them approximately using approximators of the indicator functions. So you can actually come a little bit closer to classical tests from the statistics. That's the first point. What is also quite nice related to some other questions that I had is that low degree polynomials are actually quite robust to transformation of the data. So if you take, for instance, any linear transformation or rotation, anything you want, the degree of the polynomial remains unchanged. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you mentioned this already last time, but in what context is gradient descent a low degree polynomial?
So for instance, if you can express gradient descent, so yeah.
Sorry, the question I have to repeat on the microphone. Why is gradient descent a low degree polynomial?
So it's not in all contexts, but if you can write your gradient descent process as, for instance, a linear program or a quadratic program iterated, then it's low degree just because you are iterating on a polynomial, and then it's approximately low degree if you don't have infinitely many iterations. So, yeah. So I will repeat the question. I will repeat it. So there was a question that said it's not true for projected gradient descent. So it's approximately true if you can approximately project. So if you have a set which you can approximate by a low degree polynomial, then you can project on it, and then you can approximate your projected gradient descent. Of course, everything is approximate, so there could be example where it's not true. But for many cases where people do gradient descent, you can approximate it with that. Other questions on it? Okay, so first, yeah, as mentioned, lots of algorithms are captured. Another reason, which is for me also quite convincing for binary data, is that basically, if you look at the monomials of degree smaller than d, which are used to construct the low degree polynomials, basically you are looking at interaction data. So you are looking at interaction of d variables, and you are looking at all possible interactions of d variables. So this is very natural to work with these interactions, I find. And so if you have a low degree polynomial, you just restrict the number of interactions that you take. And so the degree log of E corresponds basically to a degree where the number of monomials is of this order. because you have like, if your set has size epsilon, so you have epsilon to the d, you have an upper bound, you have approximately epsilon to the d monomials. And so if you stop 2 degree log of epsilon, you have epsilon to the log epsilon monomials. And this is slightly above the limit of what you can compute in poly of E operations. So it's a bit bigger actually than polynomial, that's what you can compute in a polynomial time of operation. People really, we still really want to have up to degree log of E, because for instance, for spectral algorithms, you need to go up to degree log of E. Questions on this? Okay, so now let's do an example. So we go back to planted click. And now I will make the model a little bit more general, just because otherwise there is a problem. To prove things with low degree polynomials, to prove things with low degree polynomials, just because, in fact, when you have lambda equal 1, so here it's a slight generalization where we put a lambda here. So when you have, maybe we put this down. Oops, no. So when you have lambda, which is, it's a bit too bright, no? Yeah, that's better. So when you have lambda which is equal to 1, the thing is that you can actually detect the click with polynomials of degree log square, and so things are a bit weird in this regime. So here, just to make things work, actually, we take a model that is a bit more general, where instead of having a click, which is an exact click, we just have like a click of people which are more connected. So more precisely here, we have this new parameter lambda. And so as before, we take a click C of size k. And then if I and j are in the click, then we put an edge between them. So not with probability 1, but with probability 1 plus lambda over 2. So of course, if lambda is equal to 1, we are back in the model from before. But here I want to get away from lambda equal 1. I will consider lambda a bit smaller, like 1 over log of n, typically, or smaller than that. And otherwise, you will put an edge with probability 1/2. So as before, I take a Bayesian framework just to have a latent parameter z star, and because I'm going to do lower bound, so I will directly go to the Bayesian risk. And so here, with probability 1/2, the latent variable is equal to 0, and in this case, I put no click. And otherwise, the latent variable is equal to 1, and I put a click. And as before, I want to look at the quadratic risk for detection of the click. And so here, as you can see, so in that kind of model, you don't have exact click you don't have like full connections for clicks, but you just have slightly more connections. Questions on the model? So the question is lambda known? Here we are going to do lower bound, so lambda is known. And so here it's even worse if lambda is known because we do lower bounds. So lambda is known.
K
Yeah.
is known also?
We are doing lower bounds, and so K is known also. We take a very easy problem so that our lower bounds carry to more difficult problems. Yeah. More questions? Okay, so in this model, just to give you a glimpse on the rates. So first, information theoretic rates. So here, if k lambda square is larger than log n, then we are able to find the click with the maximum likelihood or with some other estimators. And otherwise, we cannot. So this is information theory. It's really, given the information in my graph, I can construct or I cannot construct an estimator for whenever k lambda 2 is larger or smaller than log n. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing that we have here is, so if k square root of lambda is smaller than square root of n, then the low degree risk of degree log n is not better than that of a constant. So we cannot recover anything valuable with low degree polynomials. And so here, again, we have this kind of statistical computational gap, which you can see now in this more complex picture than before. So you again have these three regimes, here parameterized by k and lambda. So the impossible regimes, which corresponds to information theoretic threshold, the easy regime, which corresponds to the existence of an easy statistic, and the hard regime, where it's possible to prove that no polynomial of degree smaller than log n is able to solve this testing problem. Questions on the nature of the results? And so what
Are there like any reductions between pairs of k and lambda here? Like in the sense that if I know that some pairs of k and lambda are hard, then some other pairs k prime, lambda prime are hard, so you can kind of trace this out with proper reductions, not just low degree polynomials?
I think it's not at least I don't know how to do it. I think it's not at all. No, I'm not. I don't think so. I don't think you can reduce. Oh no, sorry. No, sorry. I was thinking of the sparse case. No. Yes, it is possible. Yeah.
So what is, I guess, like the core sort of regime that you need to know to? Like,
absolutely. So if you know plenty, so okay. So here, what I'm presenting, in a sense, is it's not very interesting to prove it with low degree polynomial, because if you believe in the Planchet-Crick conjecture, you can prove this for lambda. Yeah, sure. Sorry about that. Yeah. So no, what I'm doing here is not because it's in itself interesting, just to illustrate the proof techniques. And based on these proof techniques, then you can look at other problems which are more complex and which are not equivalent to Planchet-Crick. Yeah, I wanted to just focus on this simple problem because it illustrates well the proof techniques, and even if it's not really interesting from a research point of view, still it's yeah. But absolutely, you are right. Other questions? Okay, so now I will just give, before going to the lower bound, I will just give some upper bounds elements just so that you get a feeling of the rates, and then we move to the lower bound. No. Okay. Okay, so as before, I'm going to consider this renormalization of the data. So when z star is equal to 0, my data are completely Rademacher, and otherwise I have like a little bit more of ones in my clique. And so first, information theoretic threshold. So information theoretic threshold is like k lambda of order log n, k lambda 2 of order log n. So to prove this, for the lower bound, what you need to do, I'm not going to do a proof sketch of that, but you need to look at the chi-square distance of P00, so no clique and pk lambda, and you can prove that the chi-square distance is going to be small under this condition. The idea is a bit the same as before, like when lambda is equal to 1, it's really this idea that under z star equals 0, you will have some subcliques of the graph, which will be of size k, and which will have a number of connections in it, which will be large, but just by chance. And so you cannot really distinguish between the null and the alternative. Now for the upper bound, the test statistic, one test statistic, which is possible, would be to define Wn of S, which is the sum y smaller than j, yj in S, of y tilde ij. And here S is included in N, S as size k. So you look at all these things, and you just look at basically the sup of this. So your test would be the sup. And you look whether this sup is larger than k to the 3/2 square root log n. So the reason why you get that is really just a simple union bound argument. It's because, so if you look at the deviation of Wn of S minus the expectation either under 0, 0 or k lambda, so either minus 0 or minus k minus 1 divided by 2 for z star equals 0, or for z star equal 1. And for z star equal 1, you replace S by C. Of this will be smaller than k square root log 1 over delta by Höfding with high probability. So with probability larger than 1 minus delta. And then you just do a union bound over all possible sets of size k. And the number of sets of size k is bounded by n to the k. And so that's why you have this k to the 3/2 square root log n. So you just replace delta. In the delta, as usual, you will have the complexity which will appear. And so under the null, basically, with high probability, this will be 0. So if z star is equal to 0. And if z star is equal to 1, if the mean for the clique, I forgot the lambda, is larger than this, then you will be able to detect with probability going to 1. So it's a bit compressed of a proof. It's just I don't really want to spend too much time on it because it's not what I want to say here, but it's really classical arguments based on Höfding plus union bound. Huh? Just like bounding the cardinality of the number of cliques and counting the number of edges in the cliques. And then you get this rate immediately. Questions on this? Okay, so now let's go to the computational upper bound. So here the threshold is k square root lambda larger than square root of n. And so for this threshold, one statistic that you can use is exactly as in the first example of planted clique with lambda equal 1. So you can take the statistic Sn, which is, here it's you have a sup here, sup over all cliques. Sorry about that. And so for the other, for the computational upper bound, you take indicator, sorry. You take 1 over, no. You take the sum I smaller than g than yij tilde. So you count the number of recentered edges, so to say, and you just look whether this statistic is larger than n. So it's exactly the same test as before, but now the difference is that the expectation of Sn under z star is equal to 1. So when z star is equal to 1, it's equal to k minus 1 over 2 times lambda. And so we compare this guy with n when we want to construct our test. And so the condition is basically that the expectation is much larger than the standard deviation. So k square root lambda larger than square root of n. So it's the same kind of ideas as in the case where lambda is equal to 1 for the upper bound and for the information theoretic lower bound. It's just we have one more parameter, so it changes a little bit things, but same ideas. Questions on this? Okay, so now let's go to the computational lower bound. which is the interesting part. When we want to prove a computational lower bound, the first thing that we need to do is to try to change a little bit the formulation of the criterion. And here is the following lemma, which it's not exactly the lemma from these notes, but it's almost the same. It's a little bit related. And basically, what we are telling here is that we have a new criterion, which is called the advantage criterion. So it's not exactly what people generally call the advantage, but it's a slight modification because we center the functions here. And we look at this ratio and at the sup over all polynomials of this ratio. And if this thing is small, then okay, maybe we can detect. But if it's big, so if it's of order, if it's small, then we cannot detect. So let's look at a bit why intuitively first. So let's look at this criterion. So this criterion, we have like on top, we have something which is an expectation when there is a click. And in the bottom, we have an expectation when there is no click. And so if this criterion is small, it means that so the expectation of the statistic when there is a click divided by something which is the variance of your statistic when there is no click is actually small. So this criterion is really just telling you that you look at a rescaling of your expected statistic under z star equal 1 and the variance of your statistic under z star equal 0. And if this thing is small, then it will be difficult to distinguish from z star equal 0 and z star equal 1. So let's first prove this, and then we can move. Laisse-moi faire. Je vais pas. T'inquiète pas, reste ici. Ok. So during the proof, we can also spare a little bit the result itself. Huh? So, okay, so here what we want to prove is L star smaller than D equal 1 minus small o of 1, L, K, L star smaller than 0, implied, so basically what we want is implied by this criterion here. So the at 0 criterion equal L star smaller than 0 times small o of 1. So that's what we want to prove. So this is basically the formula from the conjecture, so that it's impossible to recover your testing problem with a low degree polynomial. And now this is a reformulation with our advantage criterion. So this advantage criterion, as mentioned, it's really a measure of correlation in a sense between F and Z. So it's really telling you, can I construct a statistic that is quite big when Z star is equal to 1, and that doesn't have too much variance and it's quite small when Z star is equal to 0. So that is centered when Z star equals 0 and has a small variance. So let's first write this thing. Can you see well the board, by the way? Or yeah. So first, L of F is equal to this. And so this is equal to the expected. So here, I will first center my polynomial. So I'm going to write C0 equals the expectation under the null hypothesis. So when Z star is equal to 1 of F. And I'm going to write F0, which is F minus C0. And I do that because here, the minimization which I'm doing is over polynomials which are centered under the environment where there is no clique. And so this is then equal to this. So a centered function and something a bit corrected, C0. And so this is then equal to the expectation F0 square minus twice expectation F0 Z star minus C0 plus expectation of Z star minus C0 square. Okay. And so now let's just rework a little bit on this guy. So here, I will call it 1. So 1 is actually equal to the expectation of F0 Z star minus expectation F0 C0 Sorry, now I have a small doubt. Yeah. No, I will do it differently, sorry. So, so 1 is equal to 1/2 expectation K lambda F0 Z star minus C0. And here Z star is equal to 1 minus C0 actually. Plus 1/2 expectation 0, 0 F0 minus C0. So here I'm just integrating over the prior, which basically tells me that Z star is equal to 1 with probability 1/2 and 0 with probability 1/2. And when it's 1, I am under this environment. When I have 0, I am under this environment. And now this guy is actually equal to 0 because F0 is centered for environment 0, 0, so when there is no clique. And so I just have this guy here. Okay. So now we have that. So let's work again a bit more on this. So here I have this product, and actually this is not random anymore. So I can take it outside. And I want to detach the effect of C0 and F0 because here I'm going to minimize over F. To maximize over F, and if I maximize over F, I maximize over F0 and C0. So I want to detach a bit the two. And so to do that, what I'm going to do is just to say that this product here is always smaller in absolute value than 1/4 expectation K lambda F0 square, or rather 1 over 2 times 1 over 2 eta plus eta over 2 1 minus C0 square for all eta bigger than 0. So it's just, okay, you have like a polynomial which you can factorize, polynomial of degree 2, you can factorize it, and yeah. Is it okay for this one? Okay, and so basically now going back to this, so L of f is then going to be it's then going to be larger so it's then going to be smaller, sorry, than, so the expectation of f0 square plus this expectation sorry, it's going to be larger minus 1 over eta f0 square minus eta 1 minus C0 square. Okay? And so now what I want to do is to look at the infimum over all f polynomial of degree d of this quantity. So this lower bound on the risk. And actually, so f is composed both of f0 and c0. So I can always first minimize under f0 and then minimize over c0 when I'm minimizing over f. And so this thing is then always larger than the f inf over f0. And so f0 here, it has a property, it is centered under the null hypothesis. So f0 is in my set, which I introduced here in the slide. Where is it? So it's in the set of the center polynomials here. So P00 smaller than D. And then I just take the parts that depend on F0. So F0 square plus minus 1 over eta expectation K lambda F0 square. So this first part. Plus, and now I do the minimization over C0. So infimum, so C0 is in R of expectation Z star minus C0 square minus eta 1 minus C0 square. I can minimize these two things separately. So if I minimize this guy, and now I can take eta as I want. Huh? I can really take the eta I want. It just has to be the same in both, so to say. So the idea is that this first term, if I take eta, which is very small, this guy here, it's always going to be of same order than that. just because here Z star is equal to 1 with probability 1/2. So this guy has, it's smaller, just this guy here is smaller than this guy. And so if eta is very small, minimizing this function is the same as minimizing, almost the same as minimizing this function. Just because this guy here is larger than 1 minus 2 eta expectation Z star minus C0 square. So here, basically, when I minimize over C0, what I get is the risk, the best risk for a constant, time 1 minus 2 eta. So that's for the first term. So here we get the risk, the worst case risk of a constant. Now we have the first term, this one, which is more interesting. So, okay. And now this guy. So I'm going to call it 2. And so here 2 is larger than, so first I have this expectation, and this expectation is always larger than 1/2 expectation 0, 0, F0 square, because it's equal to that plus 1/2 expectation k lambda F0 square, so I just kick one out, minus the other guy. Okay. So there we are almost at the advantage criterion. Now you can see this guy is the denominator, this guy is the numerator. Huh? And so actually, so this guy is equal to 1/2 expectation 0, 0, F0 square, square root. So of this, minus what I'm going to call adv of f, 0, square, where adv of f0 is equal to, so here divided by eta, f0 where at f0 is equal to this. Okay. Okay. And so now, when I look at this term, so here I have like a difference between something positive and here something which depends on f0, but now I can use my assumption. And my assumption is that the advantage is a small o of 1. Because here I remind you that L star is equal to 1/4 in this problem. And so here, this guy is small o of 1. So I have like something positive minus small o of 1. And so whenever eta is fixed, it can be arbitrarily large, I don't care, but whenever it is fixed, then the infimum, the supremum of f over f0 of this is going to be larger than minus small o of 1 for any f0. Okay, so here let's summarize. I had my two terms, so I'm trying to lower bound this guy. I have my two terms, one term which is like this. And actually this guy will be over eta. Hein? So one term which is like this, so it's like of order L star smaller than 0. And one term which is a small o of 1, whenever my assumption is true. So it's finished. Questions on this? Yeah. I can repeat the question on Nicola. It's,
Just for the notation, L K lambda star is the same as L star. I don't remember.
Yeah, yes.
Okay.
Yes, sorry, it's just sometimes I forget to write. The expectations, though, are different. Without indices, it's with the prior. Sorry about that. So here it's K lambda. Everywhere it should be K lambda. Yeah. Other questions? So now with the proof, maybe let's just go back at the result and let's try to reinterpret it. I think I won't have time. So this result is basically telling you that here you compute on the numerator the expectation under the z star equal 1, and you look at the variance under z star equal 0 for a function which is centered for z star equal 0. And basically, if the expectation under the null cannot be too big, if it's close to 0, then you cannot approximate with a low degree polynomial. So it's a criterion which is very natural. Questions on it? Yeah. I'm quite late on my schedule, but okay. So we have this criterion, and this criterion is actually really useful because based on it, we can really interpret what it means for a problem to be solvable with low degree polynomial, because we can really compute the advantage very easily, provided that we have an orthonormal basis of the function which are centered in 0 for the null hypothesis, for P00. So let's assume that we have an orthonormal basis phi s of these guys. So this guy is all polynomial of degree smaller than d, which are centered for the probability when you don't have a clique. Then actually, so your advantage, it's you can write it just using this basis. And so the numerator, so you write it for any function f, which is equal to this sum. So the numerator just becomes this, just the sum over alpha s of the expectation of the basis elements. And in the denominator, so you have this squared expectation. And because phi s is orthonormal with respect to the distribution of the numerator, this expectation here is equal to the L2 norm of alpha. Questions on this? So this is really the crucial point of why the advantage is nice in terms of interpretation. It's because then, like for any function f, you have this. And when you are maximizing it, so you are maximizing a linear, renormalized linear function, like you are maximizing a scalar product between the vector alpha and the expectation of the basis element. And so the maximum is attained when your vector alpha is aligned with the expectation of your basis element. So when alpha is aligned with this guy, the vector of all these guys, and therefore the advantage is exactly equal to that. So to the L2 norm of the expectation when z star is equal to 1 of the phi s of the basis element. Okay? Any questions on this? So if we have an orthonormal basis, from now things become simple. So let's construct an orthonormal basis for this. We have time. And so an orthonormal basis, which is classically considered in the literature and which is very simple, very nice, is the following. So it's basically the basis of the monomials. You just take the monomials. So namely, you take any set S of edges, which has cardinality smaller than D, and you look at the product for all edges in this set of the recentered Yij tilde. And this thing is orthonormal. So let's prove it. It's not a long proof. Oh. What did I do? J'ai perdu le truc. Ouais. Ah oui. Où ça? Ah oui. Je fais n'importe quoi. Okay. So why is this basis orthonormal? So first, the first remark is that, so for all S, such that the cardinality of S is larger than 1, the expectation, when there is no clique, of phi S is equal to 0, just because this polynomial is a product of Rademacher, which are independent. So the expectation is equal to 0. And so this thing is indeed orthogonal to constants. So now let's look at the expectation of phi S square. So this is the expectation of the product of the Yij tilde square. And so these things are either equal to -1 or to 1. So, okay, it's equal to 1. And finally, so let S prime in N, which is not equal to S. So the expectation 0, 0 of phi S prime is equal to the expectation. So here we have to look at the edges in both sets. And so for each edge we have two possibilities. Either they are in the intersection or not. So if they are in the intersection, then they just multiply together and they are out. And so we just get then edges which are not in the intersection, which remain. And so here we have the product Ij in the symmetric difference of S and S prime of Yij tilde. Okay? Because if they are in the intersection, they are squared, so they are equal to 1. And if S is not equal to S prime, then the symmetric difference is not empty, in which case we have at least one Rademacher variable in it, and they are all independent. So this thing is equal to 0. So okay, that's proven. Huh? So we have a basis which is orthonormal. So it's an orthonormal basis of interactions. Questions on this? Questions on this? No? Okay, another lemma now. And then we are almost done for the thing and also for this proof. So now what we want to do, as mentioned, is to compute these guys. compute this L2 norm. And we are going to use as phi-s the orthonormal basis which I just introduced. And so we need to compute the expectation of the phi-s. And we also need to count a little bit how many they are. So the following lemma is telling us basically what we need. First, expectation of each phi-s, in the case where z star is equal to 1. And then some combinatorial thing, some simple combinatorics thing, which tells us how many S we have that have a given number of edges and a given number of vertices. So before we prove both these lemma, I need to discuss about this V of S, which is here central to understand what's going on. And so this V of S here is the number of vertices which are connected to S. So I will just do a picture. So here, if we have a set S, what we have is a set of edges. And a set of edges actually represent a graph. So if I have a set S, which is, for instance, let's say 1, 2, 2, 3, and 10, 9, 9, 10, then this set S corresponds to a graph. And the graph here would be like this. Okay, so we have a graph with edges S. And in this graph, then the set V of S is just the set of all nodes. So we just look at all nodes of the graph. So here V of S is equal to 1, 2, 3, 9, 10. And so now we can understand better these two lemma. So they are basically, for any S, some things which are related to the number of vertices. And so let's prove these two things. So first, expectation K lambda phi S of Y. So this thing is equal to this expectation times the expectation of phi S of Y knowing the clique. Okay. And then we have two possibilities. So either the vertices are in the clique or not. So if the vertices are in the clique, we can proceed one way. And if there is at least one vertex that is not in the clique, then this thing is going to be 0 because we will have a Rademacher variable. Huh? I remind you that this is the product ij in S of Y ij tilde. So if one of the ij is not in the clique, this expectation is 0. Okay? And so this thing is going to be equal to basically the expectation of this given that everyone is in the clique times that the thing is in the clique. And so here, the expectation of Yij, knowing that Ij is in C, this is equal to lambda, because we have like the signal strength lambda here. So this thing is actually equal to lambda to the S times the probability that all vertices are in the clique. probability that everyone is in the clique. And the probability that everyone is in the clique here is exactly equal to what is written on the board. So K choose V of S divided by K choose V of S divided by N choose V of S. And actually, if you just want to think of it in a simplified way, just to see what it is, intuitively, imagine that the clique is not taken uniformly at random of size exactly K, but that it's Bernoulli with probability K over N to be in the clique. Then you would get K over N to the V over S, and this is an upper bound on it. An upper bound which is not very loose. Question on it? And so for the second term, then we bound the number of graphs which have a given number of edges and a given number of vertices. And for bounding it, what we do is that we first choose the edges. So we first choose V edges among the N possible edges, and then we put the vertices. And to put the vertices, at most, we are going to put E edges, among V minus 1 over 2 possible edges. And so we have a cardinality which is bounded like this. So I see the time I won't be able to finish my proof. I'm sorry, I'm going too slow. But just to give you a roadmap, maybe, to finish. So based on these two things, so on this result, which is basically looking at the expectation of every basis element and how many basis elements we have of a given type, what we can do is that we can bound the advantage by just summing. We just sum. And maybe, so one thing which is very interesting and which I would have liked to just show, and which I like really much about that kind of proofs, is that what you see appear in these statistics, when you do the sum, when you look at the combinatorics cancellations between the number of terms of a certain type and the expectation, is that you see the interplay between the number of edges and vertices which appear. And so you can see which graphs are actually good graphs when you look at this. So which statistics are good. And so here, from the equation, you can see what is actually intuitive. That for this problem, what you want to do is to find a statistic where you are actually maximizing the number of edges for a given number of vertices. And you also want to minimize the number of vertices. Okay. So maybe just to now give a more general conclusion on all of this, I will skip that. A more general conclusion is something I would have liked to show because it's actually something which is a bit original in this presentation. All what I said is things which you can find online actually in very good tutorial by, for instance, Alex Vine or Alfonso Bandera. What I would have liked to show, but I'm sorry, I planned badly the time, is what happens in estimation. Because in estimation, when you want to estimate elements in the clique, what you need to construct is an orthonormal basis according to the alternative hypothesis, so according to when you have a clique. And so that's something which is not in the literature, although the problem of estimation has been solved already. So basically, you have people who solve this problem using other approaches, but to the best of our knowledge, at least no one proposed the same an orthonormal basis which fits this problem before. They didn't need it, they solved the problem some other way. But having an orthonormal basis makes things super intuitive somehow. And so this is the orthonormal basis. So I would have liked to discuss it a bit, but okay, I won't have time. So thank you very much.
So we have time for a few questions. Just to understand the lower bound approach more abstractly. So it's not necessary that you use polynomials. It could be just some linear space, couldn't it?
Yeah, as long as you have an orthonormal, as long as you have some orthonormal basis.
I can always find one if I have a space. So
yeah, but sometimes it's not so easy.
okay, I mean to do the calculations, but you could think of truncated, so trigonometric polynomials, for instance, in some sense or whatever.
So, for instance, to give you an example, so here I gave you an example of an orthonormal basis for the prior which there is no clique. This is very well known. This is very trivial. But people didn't know, to the best of our knowledge, we discussed a bit with Alex Vine, they didn't know how to construct an orthonormal basis of polynomials for measures which are just, there is a clique of size k. So even very basic stuff, people don't know how to do it.
And then I have still even more abstract thinking. So in a way, I mean, if I think of the space of polynomials, then I'm linear. My estimate is just a linear combination. So it's just a linear estimation. So it's this conceptually, you know, these old lower bounds for linear estimators. It's kind of exactly the same. So you have a square loss function. And you look for the best linear estimator based on your data. But so your data is now like the features you take are polynomials in the y's or y tildes. And then you just apply a linear estimator on that. Is this conceptually exactly this lower bound idea that has been common and whatever?
So you mean minimizing over the set of polynomials the L2 risk?
No, so it's just linear estimation on the feature space.
Yeah,
so.
sure.
And then
Absolutely.
it's a standard linear lower bound for quadratic loss. Is that it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's basically this lemma, this result here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So is there
absolutely.
anything if you don't have quadratic loss? I mean, we discussed classification error or whatever.
So for classification error, the problem of low degree polynomials is really that I mean they are polynomial, so they are not going to be binary. What you can do, of course, is to apply to the output of your polynomial thresholding function, which is going to make it close to binary. It's never going to be exactly binary. I think looking at other losses like L1 loss, it's not a problem. But looking really at the binary loss, I think it's a problem just because.
You cannot.
Then you need to have a statement like. So what people do is they don't. So they would say, okay, can I make a statistic that is large under the alternative and small? This is exactly this criterion here. So this criterion is telling you cannot construct a polynomial that is. So if this thing is small, you cannot construct a polynomial that is large under the alternative and has a small variance under the null and is centered under the null.
Okay.
So it's related to it, but it's just, in a sense, you cannot threshold exactly with polynomials, so you need to go a bit around it. You can just threshold approximately.
Any last question? No? Otherwise, we can. Thanks.